My name is Lois Bridges. I'm the Vice President, Publisher of Scholastic. I publish primarily language and literacy books for educators, and it's such an honor to be here with our illustrious team. The wonderful literary critic and author Rebecca Solnit once wrote, "A book is a heart that beats in the chest of another." Our team every day devotes their hearts to helping youth, primarily from underserved communities, discover the joy and power of literacy and experience that glory of a book alive and vital in their hearts. So it's such a privilege, such an honor to welcome our team. It's my privilege and honor to welcome Bethany Henderson of America Scores, with a particular focus on the Washington, D.C. group.
America Scores works with low-income children across 12 cities in the U.S. and Canada. And we work primarily with elementary and middle schoolers. Each year we're serving about 10 to 15,000 elementary and middle schoolers at Title I schools. So these are schools where the kids are getting free and reduced lunch, where typically the kids are well below grade level on average, right, where they're housing unstable and where there are a lot of other challenges. And we operate in the out-of-school time space. So we actually run free after-school programs and summer camps year-round, seasonally in our communities. This is our reach. You can see the different communities that we are in and our stats from the past year, some of the poverty indicators as well. But our model is unique. We actually embed our literacy programming in a sports league. And we don't do it as an afterthought, and we don't do it as an add-on, and we don't do it as, oh, great, the kids are here, and now we can tutor them too. We actually integrate it very specifically into a soccer league experience. So the way our program model works is that we actually build teams of 30 to 40 children, boys and girls, multiple grade levels, 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, at the schools that we partner with. And in those school buildings, that same team of children, coached by adults from within their own school building. So it's very important. We actually pay and train coaches who come from the school building, teachers, support staff doing second shift with us. That same team plays and practice and plays soccer games together in our league. That same team writes and performs poetry together. And then that same team also designs and carries out neighborhood service projects together that are actually based in writing. So there's a whole executive function and writing component to the service projects as well. And what that means is that our programming is not individual or a la carte. A kid can't join just to play soccer or just to write poetry. What we're really able to do is build strong team bonds between the kids on the team and their coaches that translate on and off the field. And so one of my favorite stories is when I first started America Scores a little less than 5 years ago. I met these two young boys on the side of one of our fields. They're about yay high, maybe 9 or 10 years old, and falling all over themselves to tell me about their friend. You gotta meet my friend. He is our best soccer player on the team. He's amazing. The other kid's elbowing him out of the way. You gotta meet my friend. He's the best poet on our team. He's amazing. Building those kinds of bonds and that kind of connection to reading and writing and literacy is why our program works so well. Now I'll show you some of our outcome statistics. We've got a lot of them, but I threw a few up here for y'all and you can see them. We have measurable impact on literacy, measurable impact on kids' academic achievement, and measurable impact on the social and emotional aspects that actually go along with helping kids be successful in that school environment, returning them to school, making them experience the book as the beating heart in another, right? And the amazing thing about our program is that kids don't just join for a season. Typically, a kid that joins an America Scores team, whether here in DC or elsewhere, they stick. They come back year after year, even as things are changing in their lives. We tend to be the stabilizing force. Kids who are moved schools because their families moves often go out and seek an America Scores program at their next school, or as they move to middle school from elementary school. And that allows us to have that continuous reinforcing presence with them that results in this increased connection to literacy, this competency in reading and writing, this belief that they can do it, that they matter, and that they want to do it. So I could tell you how awesome these kids are myself. I thought I'd let Jaquan.
My name is Jaquan, and my poetry is called My Will of Fire. My mama said I'm from the struggle. That's why I'm always living in a bubble. I was supposed to mature at a young age because of my experiences. I come from 3 brothers and yet they're my apprentices. I come from anime. It's geeky, yeah, I know, but it's something that I watch instead of being in these streets, losing my life to my block. This ain't rapping, this is a war of lyrics. I'm just planting landmines in your head till they blow, cause I just killed it. Hold up. Let me switch the gears like this wasn't automatic. Call me Curry cause I got 30 and I'll let you have that's 30 bars. When I shoot, I'm not missing. I know that I got haters and I know that they be dissing but not dismissing everything cause it's all about me. I know I'm not great, but I aim to be an A, not a B cause that's average. That's mediocre. You just bluffing and I'm calling your hand like we're playing a game of poker. I come from confidence, something you don't have, that's why you always on me. I was the one that kicked in the door when they didn't give me the key. I come from determination, so you can be a hit, but not for long, cause I'ma be a king and beat my chest like I'm calm. I'm so far from factual, you would call me supernatural. Thought people were riding, but I realized they were distractional. An abstractional radical with a mind so imaginable. I'm a tactful lyricist with a flow that's so adaptable. I hope you're ready for your lyrical apothecary. I'm the heart stopper, blood clot up in your capillary. I come from cleverness with my lyrics like a spider. Call me a hot pepper. I was picked by Peter Piper. Call my lyrics hieroglyphs. Cause they were huffy to decipher. If I was an XXL freshman, I would kill a whole cipher. I write and write repeatedly until my head gets tired. My personality is with sparks, my will is fire.
Shaquan was an 8th grader when he wrote and performed that.
Wow, that's awesome.
I speak on behalf of a staff of 75 people and many people who've been through our school, so it's hard for me to speak as an individual. But I'm gonna see if you can see the cool pictures of our kids doing their thing, except of course, there we go. So our kind of project of turning our kids into readers, into kids who love reading, really began almost probably 20 years ago. And it started very small, and it is obviously always a work in progress. But we really felt the need to challenge the status quo of urban public schooling, which is test more, test often, and work on those tests all the time. And then we're also in the last decade, really working against, not against, but with the rise of social media and technology pulling our students away from the written word and from long narratives, and also the pressure to conform that's happened in education over the last, I would argue, 20 years. And a lot of people would say that's been the situation for a long time. But we had the leadership and a community of people who decided that we were going to fight that trend and turn our kids into readers. And importantly, I think, and the reason that this matters is that we wanted to not expect to use unusual funding streams. This is with the normal budget that a normal Title I school gets. And so the intent was, this is something that can be replicated in other schools. It's not easy, it's not a quick fix at all, but the idea being that it's something that any school, hopefully with interest and dedication, can do. So really quickly, I'm just going to talk about a couple things that are important to us. Just to let you know, we're a 6th through 12th grade school, but we're kind of a typical school for New York City. We credit our reading and literacy program with having approximately a 25% higher graduation rate than New York City public schools, and about 90% of our kids either attend higher education institutions or go on to further training. So we feel pretty successful despite our kids having challenging lives, right? I mean, very similar to your environment. So we started with independent reading, which is giving kids a sacred space, 20 to 30 minutes a day, to just read. And I was the classroom teacher then, I'm now the librarian, and we just read together. And then we figured out that we needed to do a little bit more than that. But we slowly created time and space throughout the building. So that means we reformed and revitalized the school library, which is the heart of the school from my position, and is a place where kids 6 through 12 interact around the printed word, which is still really important to them. And we also created time and space for teachers to co-plan. So that's an opportunity for them to talk about what they're doing to help improve our students' experience. I think our kids would say this might be the most important thing, that they get choice. So we flood our building with materials that reflect our children's lives and expand our children's lives, right? So it's important that they have things in their lives that reflect them, their race and ethnicity, their language, their culture, their sexuality, their gender. And we are so lucky to live in a time when young adult literature in particular has exploded, right? I mean, thank you. But we have been working this from the very beginning. And I think that there is nothing more important than giving our kids the vision of the world and giving them the choice to see it themselves, and then giving them the tools to find it and be able to read it. So recommendations, student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, we are all reading all the time. Then finally, that is the big piece. This is a community of practice, right? So reading is not a solitary adventure. Any of you who've had a good experience in a reading group know that that works, but kids listen to other kids when they talk about what they want to read. They want to read what Oprah is reading. They want to read what's on the books, on the shelves of the bookstore. And so that is our urgent work. We try to get authors in. We try, we do book clubs, but the most important thing is that kids feel this connection to reading, and that they leave Eastside knowing they can read. And even if the way that they read going forward is by listening to audiobooks on the train or by reading to their children, the whole point is that they perceive themselves as readers. And then just finally, we really do feel like it is our responsibility to share this work. We need to be pushing against that narrative of urban schools and urban schooling that is so prevalent in some corners of education. And so we participate in a showcase program so people can come in and visit us. Any of you, if you would like to come to New York City, we're pretty easy to get to by the train. You are welcome to come talk to our kids and our teachers. That's the work of the future. All of our kids deserve this.
So Mango Tree Literacy Lab is a nonprofit idea incubator that promotes reading, writing, teaching, and publishing in African languages through innovative research-based projects and enterprises in northern Uganda. So this is a picture from 1997 when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and that is a first grade classroom there. It's about 100 children and one teacher, and I joined Peace Corps. I was 40 years old. I'd been a primary school teacher for many years, and I learned a lot under Mango Tree classrooms. I think it's so hard to try and encapsulate our work and why we do the work we do. But what I'd like you to imagine is that you're a child and you're home and you're engaged with the world, you're learning, you're competent, you're doing all kinds of interesting things, and then it's time for you to go to school. You're 6 years old in Uganda when you start school, and you walk into a classroom, and instead of a language that you know and you understand, your teacher, for all of you in this room, or many of you in this room, instead of speaking English, your teacher is speaking Japanese. And you're suddenly having to learn in Japanese. That's what it's like and it was like for Ugandan children in 1997 when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And that was really hard for me to get my mind around. And so all the education reform I saw was moot if you didn't address the language of instruction issue. In 2005, the government of Uganda changed its policy. But before I get there, let me jump a little bit. So in 2000, after I was finished with Peace Corps, I started a company called Mango Tree. It's an instructional design company developing tools for local teachers that would work in Ugandan classrooms. You know, a lot of wonderful educational materials were coming from Europe and America, but they weren't really, you know, realistic for those classrooms, and they weren't replaceable. So, for example, this is the kind of products that we made. This is made from this is made from a grain sack, and it's an alphabet chart now. So these are made. Every one of these is made by hand, and we have a lot of people who are employed either sewing the grain sacks or, you know, making these kind of charts. And that company continues. It's now doing all kinds of things. It's also doing television shows, and it's doing IT, you know, things on tablets and all kinds of other things. I stepped down from the company in 2007. It got too big, and I wasn't happy anymore. I wasn't a businessman. I didn't want to run a company. I wanted to help Ugandan education. And since then, we also now, Mango Tree has started the Design Hub in 2017. We have it's a co-working and event space. Our company is located there, but there are like 25 or 30 other design and architectural and all kinds of interesting companies doing work there. So that's the background. But in 2008, when I had sort of stepped aside from the company, I started looking for funding to do the work that I really wanted to do, which was find a simple model for teaching children to read and write in the local language. I don't have time now to explain how complicated that is for teachers who've been teaching English, reading in English their whole lives, to suddenly teach in their own language was not easy. It was a very daunting task. So we got the funding, and from 2010 to 2013, we developed a set of materials and a methodology for teaching. And it had a teacher's guide, it had books like these that were the primers, this was for a term, and each term there was also a book that they read, a storybook. And for the P1 kids, they had a slate, and then you saw the alphabet chart. So in 2013, this was funded by the Hewlett Foundation, and they said, we want you to do an external evaluation. And we got someone from the University of Michigan to do that for us, and the results were kind of amazing. And with those results then, that researcher from the University of Michigan, she actually moved to the University of Illinois, but she, and with us, found funding to do a scaled up version. So I left from Uganda in 2014. My work was done, and from 2014 to 2016, they did a scaled-up version in 120 schools with the same, in a randomized control trial environment. And this is where I get into the area I don't feel very comfortable with, but because I'm not a researcher and I don't understand all of this terminology, but again, let me just read. By the end of P3, third grade, the students in our school raised reading scores by 1.2 standard deviations, the largest gain in reading ever achieved by a randomized education intervention, according to a systematic review of the literature. So somebody named McEwen in 2015 looked at all the reading, the randomized control trials with reading to look at the effect size, and our full program effect size was, as you can see, much bigger than any other that had been done. So that was sort of astonishing, and we've taken that, and now this is again some more data. Basically, what you can see, I'm nervous. What you can see here, the full cost program, this was with our with our trainers involved, at the end of the program, 80% of the children were readers at the end of P3. That maybe doesn't sound good by American standards, I don't know, but anybody, that's pretty astonishing. We also had a low cost where it was civil servant, not our trained people, but the local tutors going into schools and training teachers, and even there, 70% of children were readers at one level or another. The blue is 0 to 10 words per minute. The green at the top, or the teal at the top, is 40 or more words per minute. But then you can see in control schools, I think it's 60% of the children are still not reading at the end of P3. Non-readers cannot read a single word. So that's the reality of Ugandan schools. So now we've learned a lot, and now we've established an NGO called Mango Tree Literacy Lab, and we don't want to do big randomized control trials anymore, but we want to work on a small scale on a variety of innovations. A few of the things we're working on right now are a national literacy model was developed at the same time and took a lot of what the national literacy model took a lot from our model. So we're now supporting schools to implement the national literacy model. We have a portable library project integrating storybooks into the curriculum. That's what you see there. That red box is the library, the portable library. And then the children, these are hanging around their necks, but they're, again, this grain sack material with books in them. And we're doing a lot with parent community involvement and getting books out, getting them sold directly to parents and that sort of thing. So that's what we're doing. Thank you very much.
So at REACH, we think that the leaders that we need to improve reading exist in our communities. So what we do is we prepare teens to be tutors and role models. And we do that through a core program that hires struggling teen readers to be elementary school reading tutors. That works through a three-pronged model. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, we train our tutors. They work with professional instructors to go over curriculum, to prepare for teaching, sometimes to encounter the content for the first time because they don't want to make mistakes in front of a 7-year-old. But that involves reading lower level texts and doing a lot of the stuff that they might need to do themselves. Our average tutor works for us starting reading around a 3rd to 5th grade level as they're in high school. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they use those training sessions to do one-on-one or small group tutoring with 2nd and 3rd grade students, and we pay them for it. This is a pretty significant part of our model. The way we recruit is we stand outside schools with big signs that say, "Want a job?" Most 14-year-olds say yes to that question, and then are excited to work with little kids, because often in many underserved communities, teenagers are very used to a caretaking role. They're used to being responsible for younger siblings, so we're able to leverage that and make it literacy infused. In the process, we meet people like Essence and Renard. So Renard used to have like the craziest epic meltdowns during our sessions. He hated reading because he just couldn't do it very well. I'm by training a clinical social worker. I would often get called in to try to deal with Renard, and I couldn't get him to calm down. But you know who could? Essence. So she's now a junior in high school, but when she came to us, she was, one, a struggling reader, but two, someone that had some anger issues. So she saw a lot of herself in Renard and liked to work with him. They actually worked together on some deep breathing techniques. He hasn't had a meltdown in months at this point, which is great for the rest of us that had to manage them. But it also really has shown her the impact that she can have on other people while she's developing her reading skills. It works. I mean, we can get into, I feel sort of the same way about data sometimes, but our kids grow faster than non-participating peers. Our tutors that come to us reading at a 3rd to 5th grade level, if they stick with us for 4 years, which a significant chunk do, we can graduate kids reading on grade level. So we're actually able, about a quarter of our kids each year grow by at least 2 grade levels in reading, so those high school kids are actually closing that gap they have when they get to high school. The elementary school kids also grow faster than their non-participating peers, which is what our elementary school principals are always concerned about. We ask you to invite 20 to 25 teenagers into your building on afternoons twice a week. Not every principal is excited about that, but we get results, which is good. And we build long-term relationships. So we met Rico in 9th grade. He was failing both math and English at the time. We were able to provide him with a tutor. He was a really good tutor with the kids. And now, 7 years later, Rico is still connected to the organization. He's a part-time student at Montgomery College, a nearby community college. He's twice authored children's books. And he's currently a teacher's aide at Amadon Bowen, a nearby elementary school here in DC. So literacy is now a significant part of his life. Most compelling to me is he pays his own car note every month, which sort of throws me off. He has a car and is like a real-life adult now, but he really started that through this relationship where he learned what he was capable of. And I mentioned he was an author, and that was because he and some of his peers in 2012, when we were talking about diversity in literature, which was not hugely present even 5 years ago. There's been that explosion that I think many of us are probably proud of. One of the kids said to us, we could write better books than these, basically. I'm paraphrasing. So we let them. And what we've done in the time since is that Reach Teens have authored 25 children's books. About 20,000 of those books are in circulation. I see people, I have some of them on the table I'm sitting at, so feel free to come check them out. And these are not only books that are representative in terms of what the characters look like, but they're representative in terms of the stories. So I can see from where I am, Dina Misses Her Mom, which is about a little girl whose mom is incarcerated and she's dealing with the anger that creates. So our kids write from their lived experiences and create those narratives that other kids need to see. We do that in partnership with a local writing program at Press called Shout Mouse Press. Lana is here, so that's exciting, who partners with other nonprofits as well to create those books. We were proud to be the founding partner with Shout Mouse and therefore have the largest number of books, which is exciting to us. Our teens go out into the community, they read. So what you're seeing up here on the left is an author reading. That's typically not what an elementary school kid thinks an author reading looks like, but Kayer is the author of 2 books as well and went back to the elementary school he had once gone to read. And on the right, we use those books and create curriculum around it. So you may end up walking into a tutoring session on a Tuesday or Thursday, and your tutor is doing a lesson based on a book that she wrote, as is the case on the right here. We also think that literacy is about advancing equity. And especially the work that we do, we think is about advancing racial equity in a place where the achievement gap is so severe. Our teams show that the leaders that we need to address our issues in schools are present in the communities we're serving. And we show that every day. We invite everyone to come watch them tutor, including the security officers in their building, because they're often shocked by what our teens look like in environments where they're empowered to be the change leaders we need. We create the content our kids need. We compensate the tutors, which they don't make a huge amount of money, but they do sometimes keep the lights on in their house. They're sometimes the only one with phones that are on consistently. They sometimes buy groceries or school uniforms for younger siblings. These things are important. We challenge assumptions about teens, because you can't come to our program and still think that teens are just always troublemakers. And we center the contributions that students can make to their own education. It doesn't have to be about us doing for them. It can be about them creating what we're doing.
Reading is Fundamental is the winner this year of the Rubenstein Prize. We take particular pride in this for a variety of reasons, but I think an important one for the discussion today. We continue to innovate. All of us, I think, in this room and beyond need to be dedicated to innovating around literacy to solve the literacy crisis that exists today. There are 25 million kids in America today that aren't reading proficiently. I was particularly interested in the comments that you were making about Uganda and others, and the people here on this panel who are digging deep in their local community to drive impact. RIF is a national organization that creates scalable solutions to drive literacy outcomes. We've been around for 50 plus years. Again, how exciting that a 50 plus year old organization or person, that's me, can continue to innovate. We can continue to be dedicated to the idea that until we solve the problem, our problem that we're solving at Reading is Fundamental, that we're committed to, is ensuring that every child in America has the confidence to strive, because literacy opens doors to life, right? The reading and literacy are the foundation for opportunity for every child. And the fact that this is an issue in America today is something that we've been dedicated to for the last 50 years. And again, take enormous pride in the fact that the Rubenstein Committee recognized our work as not only being relevant, but being innovative. And that's so critical to where we focus our work going forward. What do? We invest in communities. We make grants to local community organizations. We invest in children. We provide content through those local community organizations to ensure that kids in underserved communities who don't have access to books, to resources, to activities that create a culture of literacy can be supported. And we also focus on our role as leaders. RIF for 50 years has been the leading voice for children's literacy in this country. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been in an airport. I spoke on a panel in England related to literacy. I was in a school, and people will come up to me and say, RIF impacted my life. Reading is Fundamental was part of the dinner time conversation in my family. I literally had a flight attendant on a flight in Louisville, Kentucky say to me, my first book came from Reading is Fundamental. I also had the privilege of hearing from Tina Fey, right, who's obviously a pop culture icon, who also said Reading is Fundamental was part of the ecosystem of my family growing up. So RIF has a long history of having impact. Going forward, our focus is on continuing to have that impact. And the reason that we do it is because, again, I'll use, I was, again, so moved by the comments that you were making. The stats are staggering. The fact that so many kids in America today are entering school not prepared, are moving into fourth grade, not reading proficiently, and importantly, graduating from high school, not reading proficiently. The impacts of that are staggering. They follow these children into adulthood for everything from job security and their ability to raise their own families. So this issue is real. I know everybody in this room agrees. I don't want to preach to the choir, but I absolutely want to highlight the fact that the reason RIF is around for 50 plus years is because until we solve this problem, we'll continue to work at it. We also don't do it alone. We recognize that we are not the one organization that's going to drive the outcomes. We're going to work with all the groups here and all the groups here in the room and through communities across the country that are committed to this issue. We believe it's an ecosystem. We believe we have to create a culture of literacy, and that means bringing communities and partners together for collective impact. Our innovation in the last year that I believe was part of the driver for our, if I didn't mention it, we won the Rubenstein Prize, was the fact that we focused on the need to address children in the digital age. We have 21st century learners who are digital natives, and books are a critical component of how we reach kids and engage them, provide them with resources and tools, the ones that you were talking about, that they can relate to. But we need to recognize that the way kids learn today and the way they access resources includes a digital component. So Reading is Fundamental really focused in the last year on creating digital opportunities for, again, 21st century learners and digital natives to really be able to engage in a compelling way with reading and literacy. So we launched websites, we created resources. We also recognized that we needed to create resources for kids that weren't reading on grade level that were relatable to them. So a whole host of support materials, as well as best practices and resources for those community organizations across the country that are actually doing the grassroots work. Best practices on doing a read aloud, how to connect with a library or a school, how to volunteer your time. These are all tools that we provide for the organizations that we support, and we deliver them through apps, through, again, online support resources, and we'll continue to evolve those platforms to create an integrated approach to literacy for kids across the country. So our impact is really remarkable over, as you can imagine, a 50-year history. I've managed to stay married for 25 years and have 3 amazing kids over 50 years. RIF has managed to impact 50 million children. engage over 1 million volunteers, distribute over 415 million books in communities across the country. Those are just a handful of our reach stats. We've also, I'm not as afraid of statistics as some on our panel might be. We've introduced programs that have had statistically significant impact on learning outcomes. But all of our work is driven by the fact that we partner with other like-minded organizations, and we build capacity to ensure that we're leveraging our resources collectively across our platforms to drive the outcomes that we're looking for. So with that, I want to thank everyone here for being dedicated to literacy, and importantly, thank the Library of Congress for the amazing recognition around the work that we're doing this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our amazing team. Let's give them a round of applause.